Welcome to the Harvest Ministry Network Leadership Podcast with your hosts, Ron and Jennifer Eivaz. Ron and Jen co-pastor Harvest Church in Turlock, California, which is a multi-site campus and a spirit-filled community. Today, they will tackle how to break through limitations and grow beyond them. Let's listen to them now.
Finishing well also requires, I think, for us to grow our capacity. And, most leaders fail or aren't able to carry what they need to carry because what they are leading is too heavy for their capacity. So what happens is we buckle under the weight of what we're carrying. So we could either go find something lighter to carry, or we could increase our capacity. One of the things I share with leaders is, and I was just sharing this with the pastor yesterday I was with, is, what I'm carrying today is way heavier than what I carried when I first started here at the age of 27, even though it felt like a, very bad situation that I walked into in terms of the health of the church and so forth. But today I feel a lot lighter than I did even back then, even though what I'm carrying today is much heavier. But I think hopefully that's because I've increased my capacity. So I can carry something heavier, but not have it crushing me because it's a capacity issue. And you just have to remember, as leaders, God doesn't want us to buckle under what he's called us to carry. Remember, he said his burden is light, his yoke is easy, right? So, if you have a leader that's just talking about how heavy their load is and God has them under this heavy thing, that's not God, it's their capacity. So we have to increase our capacity. So today we want to talk about how to lift the lids in our life of leadership and not to self-sabotage. I think a lot of times we self-sabotage ourselves as leaders. Jen, do you want to kind of define what we're talking about when we say self-sabotage?
Well, you probably experienced it or you have watched it. Have you ever watched somebody just make decisions to destroy their life rather than making an obvious decision that would help them progress, help them be stable, help them to, do things well? They go in the opposite direction. And a lot of times it has to do with what's happening inside of them, what they believe about themselves. And that can be on a spectrum. They just flat out do not have any self-worth at all. Or they don't have wisdom. And so they're making decisions out of some sort of idealism or philosophy that just doesn't work. And they end up self-sabotaging themselves. And, sometimes they want to quit. I've known people that they're at the place of quitting. Internally they've quit inside. And so they make a dumb decision it's like their way of saying, I quit. All right. So these are all kind of things that we need to examine and just consider with people that we're ministering to, as well as ourselves, especially when things are getting heavier and heavier. It's like, okay, I'm feeling like quitting. So if I'm not careful, if I don't do something about this, then I might reach a point of self-sabotage just to get myself out.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody sets out to quit or to ruin what they're doing, but it's a subconscious thing. And I think a lot of self-sabotage also comes out of a wounded spirit. There's areas of our life that are not whole, that are wounded. And I think sometimes in leadership, because there's a sense of authority we walk in, or power, and some narcissism gets involved with that, is we get away with a lot of stuff just because nobody's telling us, hey, the thing you do is not right. It eventually is going to catch up to us anyway, because we will self-sabotage ourselves. And we do things out of the wound. We do the woundedness of our heart. We do things out of our maybe dysfunctional upbringing, different things. And we don't realize it's dysfunctional or wrong, or we're doing out of our wounding, because to us is normal. So if you live with your dysfunction or a wound, to you, it's normal. So that's why you have to have greater revelation. You have to have, exposure where you see things that are better and healthy. And one of my favorite passages, those who know me know it's one of my favorite passages, is Proverbs chapter 4, verse 20. It says, "My son, give attention to my words, incline your ear to my sayings. Do not let them depart from your eyes. Keep them in the midst of your heart. for they are life to those who find them and health to all their flesh. And then verse 23 says, keep your heart with all diligence, right? The word keep there, or the phrase keep your heart, means put a guard around your heart, guarded, as a soldier would, like a garrison would guard the heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. So the issues of life come out of your heart. I think a lot of times we want to blame everything to spiritual warfare or the devil. Now, of course, the devil gets involved. Spiritual warfare gets involved, but the open door many times is the wounding of our heart. It's the issues of our heart that open the door. So keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. But literally also in the Hebrew, that means your heart determines the borders and the parameters of your life. So keep your heart with all diligence, because your heart determines the borders and the parameters of your life. So that's the whole thing with self-sabotage and ceilings, is it comes out of our heart. So that means as our heart grows, as our heart becomes healthy, as leaders, we grow our capacity, our borders actually begin to grow and our capacity begins to grow. Now, before I forget, if you think of a question or something you want to pose, put it in the chat. I'm not looking at the chat because I can't do more than one thing at a time. So Shelby's going to be sending me those questions here at the end.
Can I add a scripture that I pray this scripture is out of Psalms 119, verse 32. And it says, I will run the course of your commandments, for you shall enlarge my heart. One of the things that I pray is that God would enlarge my heart so that I can obey him. The reality is none of us want to disobey the Lord, or none of us want to shortchange the call of God in our life. But again, it goes back to what my husband was saying about having the heart capacity. And the reality is, our heart capacity many times needs to be grown by the Lord. There's some occasions, some things that we will encounter in ministry that we have not developed the heart capacity. We don't even know how to. It never even, crossed our minds. There's no book out there on what I'm dealing with specifically. And it's something that the Lord will need to intervene in our individual lives and actually grow our heart so that we can encompass what just is about ready to take place or has taken place, so that we can soar through that and we can actually navigate that successfully. Yeah. So I want to encourage you to pray that the Lord would enlarge your heart so that you can obey him.
Yeah. There's this principle in management called the Peter Principle. Many are probably familiar with it. Basically, the Peter Principle says, you get promoted to the level of your incompetence. So you've probably seen this in organizations before, where people keep climbing the ladder, they keep getting promoted, and then their last position is a position that they actually are pretty incompetent in. They don't do well in. So the whole reason they got promoted was because they could handle that level really well and they excelled. And they keep climbing levels until they're no longer competent. Now, the Peter Principle, though, is based on our competency not increasing. So, in other words, your levels of responsibility keep increasing, or oversight, but your competency doesn't increase. So, I think in our context, we could put it this way: is my capacity increasing? Am I going to greater levels of, heart capacity, competency? The Bible says we go from glory to glory. So I think we should be able to go from capacity to greater capacity, and the Lord being able to allow us to lead at a greater level of influence without that influence crushing us. So in other words, we don't want to have a greater influence, and yet at the same time, our heart shrinking, our joy shrinking, our peace shrinking, because that's what tends to happen when you lead at a level that you don't have the capacity for.
Jim Mill asked a question. I actually caught it as it came up in the chat. But he said, can you define heart capacity more? You might have a definition that you want to give to them, but I know the way I have learned heart capacity, it has to do with the very center of who you are. Your will, your emotions, the foundation of your beliefs. As you believe, your heart, you will go the direction that you believe in your heart. And so with that, when we have emotions that have been grown and formed over life, and you have some emotional auto responses that, can't handle conflict, can't handle certain situations, then you will shrink back because I can't handle that level of conflict. I can't handle that level of stress because you haven't had a formation inside of the very center of who you are. Now you can do something about that. God can do something about that. There's always hope. But that's what we're talking about with heart capacity, the very center, your defaults, your autopilots, what you do when you find yourself in a really stressful situation, or you get you feel rejection or something, the things that you do by default in autopilot, that's what we're talking about. That needs to grow.
Thanks for listening. Are you a minister looking for leadership resources in a spirit-filled context? Visit hmnetwork.org to learn about membership and credentialing opportunities.